Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Allie. I haven't been reading that much in the past 2 months, which I don't know, it feels like a while. I'm not in a reading slump at all. I feel like once I actually made myself read, I would really enjoy it, but I can't get myself to pick anything up. So I'm very much looking forward to a fresh start in August, but before we can move on, I want to talk about the books that I've read, DNFed, and started in June and July. First, let's talk about June. I, like everyone else, read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Oh, sorry. I don't know what that alarm was for. Hopefully it was nothing important. This is a book about a young woman who's 20 years old in a fantasy world. She enters a sort of military where she's going to be a dragon rider, and it's very competitive in a lot of ways, including the potential of being killed by your competitors, by your classmates, by your peers, which is just insane. The first 3 months are probably the most dangerous. Actually, it sounds like the first day to go into this dragon rider school is the most dangerous because you have to walk on this ledge, and like 50 to 60 kids, they're not kids, they're adults, but they die every single year just walking into the school. Like, why would they do that? It's supposed to prove like that you've got the gumption and the skill to be able to ride dragons, but I mean, they could have just taken a test or something. During the first 3 months, there are a lot of different, I guess they would be tests of skills and lots of wrestling with your peers. And at the end of those 2 or 3 months, I kind of forget at this point, there's something called the threshing, where you have the opportunity for a dragon to choose you. I thought that was gonna be the whole book, but that's over probably in the first 30%. And then this book kind of gets a little bit bigger in the world, and it hints at more political things that are probably going to continue in the series as a whole. And there is a big romance that really amps up in the second half of this book. I really enjoyed the first half of it. All of these challenges, all of these tests, the sort of danger that was involved with it. Specifically, I could not put the book down during the threshing when the dragon is supposed to choose their rider. That is the part that I couldn't go to sleep. Like, I actually stayed up way too late on a school night. And it was very satisfying. I definitely believe that the hype is sort of real and that this is very engaging. It makes you want to read it very quickly. I think it's very entertaining. I thought it was really fun. I don't think it was the best piece of literature. I don't think anyone is saying that it is. So I ended up giving it 4 stars because honestly, if I enjoy something, my level of enjoyment is going to really drive my rating. Like, that is what I care most about. Did I have fun while I was reading this? Yes. But yeah, it was cringy. There were some really stereotypical like YA fantasy that probably should have, I don't know, maybe evolved in the past couple years, maybe shouldn't have been in here. But then again, it was kind of fun and goofy because it was sort of cheesy and cringy. Overall though, I'm glad I read this just because every single person is talking about it. So it's like something that you can easily talk to with other book people. And I don't know, it's just like we all were involved in a book club and we never, I don't know, I just love that sense of community that this book has brought. Then I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I also gave this 4 stars, and again, enjoyment over actual, I don't know what word I'm trying to come up with here, but like there are some flaws in here, but I really had so much fun with this. I also read it while I was on vacation, so there is a big summer feeling to this book. It's on a lake. It's just the summer vibe is so real, and while I was reading it, it was summer, I was on the ocean, in the sun, just living life, and I don't know, this was like a perfect reading moment for me where everything was just aligning and I just loved it. This is a story about childhood friends to lovers. It's also a second chance romance, so there are 2 timelines, one in the present, one in the past, obviously. And so you meet these kids as they become friends. I think they're like 12 years old, and you watch them sort of grow in their friendship and grow into a relationship, and you find out why they stop talking to each other, and you obviously get them seeing each other again. I really love the messiness of this actual conflict. It makes sense why they stop talking to each other, and I like it when the logic matches the trope. Like, yeah, this is messy. I think the couple of flaws with this you have to take with a grain of salt because this is the author's debut book, I'm pretty sure, and I find it so impressive. The biggest flaw, in my opinion, is the transition of the relationships. Even just her meeting Percy. Percy and Sam are the main 2 characters, the love interests. They become friends just from like being in the same town, which yes, can happen, but when you're 12 years old and you meet a boy, I'm just thinking of every 12-year-old boy I've ever met. They're not usually gonna be like, okay, let's be best friends. I don't I know. I feel like that could have used a little bit more time to simmer, and then the transition of the conflict. So we waited this whole book to kind of find out what happens, and you don't really find out till pretty close to the end. It's a big moment, and even though that these characters have had 10 years to sort of process it, they kind of resolve it pretty quickly, and I kind of would have liked to sit in it a little bit more or have them on page dealing with it more. So those are my only flaws, and they're not very big flaws at all. The writing itself I thought was very well done. It felt different than some of the romance novels I've been reading lately, so I'm very interested in reading more from this author. I have Meet Me at the Lake. I read the first chapter of this. I know that it's sort of about two people meeting for like one day a long time ago and then seeing each other again. That's just never gonna compare in the same way that Childhood Friends to Lovers is, because they had 6 years of friendship before, you know, they took a break and had a second chance. One day, I don't know if that's enough to build on, but like I said, I really enjoy this author's writing, so let me know if you've read this one. If you enjoyed Every Summer After, did it hold up? Let me know. Then I read The Assassin's Blade. I'm lending it to my friend right now, and apparently he hates it, so that's fun. I gave this 3.5 stars, which is exactly what I gave Throne of Glass. I just love Selena, okay? She's a character that will never let me down, I'm hoping at least. I've only read two books where she's the main character. This is a collection of short stories that happens before Throne of Glass, and I really liked one of them, the one where she's in the desert. I think I just really like that setting. It gave me some Dune vibes. I liked that there were silent assassins in this one, so she had to learn a new way of being an assassin. I love any sort of training montage, and Sarah J. Maas does those a lot, especially with Selena. It happened in Throne of Glass too. So yeah, the stories are basically her being an assassin, her sort of getting herself into trouble, but standing up for her beliefs, but then having to deal with the consequences of that. Something is mentioned in Throne of Glass that happens in The Assassin's Blade, so I already knew it was coming, and so I thought I had prepared myself for it. I was like, oh, I'm not really going to react to this too strongly because I already know what's gonna happen, and I didn't feel very close to the character and the relationship Selena had with that character. But then it happened, and I teared up, so I wasn't expecting that. Maybe I'll just give this a 3 because I definitely didn't like it as much as Throne of Glass. I just don't know. I feel like I love short stories if it's a sort of artsy, sort of dead inside, sort of empty short story collection, and not one that has my favorite characters in it, not one that has a lot of action, because I would much rather have a longer story. I hope that one of the other Throne of Glass books takes place in the desert. I think that would be so cool to go back to that Assassins building. I completely forgot what it's called now, and I don't have the book in front of me, but I just really love that setting. I also read Praise by Sarah Kate, and this is the first book in the Salacious Billionaires Club. Is that what it's called? Basically, every book follows one of the creators of this Salacious Players Club. I think that's what it's called. It's a sort of nightclub that these people create, focusing on sexuality, but also creating a safe space for people to experiment sexually in a legal way somehow. I don't really understand that part of it, but whatever. It's a romance novel. This story is involving, I completely forget everyone's names, but it's an age gap ex-boyfriend's dad romance, and it also focuses on a sort of sub-dom situation. She's also his employee. So there's a lot of different tropes and a couple different forbidden kind of tropes here as well. I didn't find the dominant submissive part that mind-blowing or like forbidden. I think it was pretty basic for a dom-sub story, especially if you read other ones in that genre. But the messiness of this situation, the sort of forbidden element of this is my ex-boyfriend's dad, and she still sort of talks to the ex-boyfriend, and the ex-boyfriend is been in a fight with his dad, so the dad doesn't really want to rock the boat with his son. There's a lot of messiness in this sort of familiar, that's not the word I'm looking for, familial situation. That messiness was really fun because I understood why they couldn't be open about their relationship, because imagine being a father and having to tell your son, I'm banging your ex-girlfriend. No, that's messy. So that part of it was really, really entertaining. So I'm gonna give this a 3-star. There were some parts of it that, I don't know, I thought were kind of boring or cheesy, but I will always be down for a messy romance. In a true forbidden kind of thing like that, I don't know why that intrigues me, but I think it's the logical part again. Like, yeah, I understand why they can't be together because that's a big deal. Now for books that I started and didn't finish. I started the second book in the Salacious Players Club. It's called Eyes on Me, and this follows another one of the owners. So we meet all of these characters, I'm pretty sure, already, which is kind of fun. I like that type of series. This one, if I thought the first one was forbidden, oh my God. This one is about an older guy. I don't know how old he is, maybe 40 years old, maybe late 30s. He falls in love, are you ready? With his stepsister. And not only that, like, I thought that was kind of interesting.
No? You're really weird.
Because that is truly forbidden. Like, oh my God, that is messy. But for some reason, I thought it would be like maybe their parents got married when they were in high school. But it's even weirder because I'm pretty sure she was like in elementary school and he might have been in college. That's a little icky. It's a little icky. Like, I guess they never really lived together, so that's something to be considered, but the fact that she was like a little girl. I don't know. I read like 25% of the way through until they started being sort of sexual with each other, and I just couldn't do it. I thought I was into forbidden like that, and I don't know if I can. I don't know. Maybe it's because I have siblings, and I also have foster siblings who I obviously didn't know when I was a kid, but like I moved in when I was in high school. But even thinking about it like that, like, ugh. So I think I'm just too close to this situation for me to enjoy it. I am taken out of the story and I'm like icked out. I do think I want to continue in the series just because they are so intriguing and they're so taboo, like truly taboo. And I find that interesting that an author can go there. And again, it's dealing with things that are logically good reasons not to be together. Yeah. Oh, I also started Love Theoretically, the new Ali Hazelwood book. And this is really ramping up to be my favorite of hers. I feel like I love Ali Hazelwood's writing. It's really easy to jump into. It's really fun and funny and goofy. And I feel like it's less and less cringy as her books come out. But I stopped this one because I was actually getting pretty frustrated. Even though I was having a great time and I think this is gonna be great, I could not handle the main character because she has it so far in her head that the MMC hates her. And she says it right to his face, like, I know you hate me, but, and that he will literally say, and I quote, I have never hated you. I actually really like you. 20 minutes later, she'll be like, yeah, well, I know you hate me. So he will repeat, I've never hated you. I really like you. She will again say, I know you really hate me. I know you can't stand me. I could not deal with it. I had to put the book down because what is wrong with her? Like, I get emotionally she's probably dealing with insecurity and not believing that anyone could like her, but my God. And it's so funny because the male main character actually said at one point, I had to write it down, you're operating on some pretty big assumptions. And I just wrote L.O.L. because yes. At some point I'm gonna pick it back up and get over it, but my Lord, I don't like that in a book. When someone says something and is communicating clearly and the person doesn't even attempt to listen to them, like, it's different. Like, I know you can be insecure, but you can also like acknowledge that what the other person said. She doesn't even acknowledge that he said it. She completely just like blacks that part out. I also read Some of the Half Moon. This was a library book that I was listening to, and it's very easy to listen to. It's contemporary fiction. I think there are a couple different timelines. There's also a couple POVs. It's about a man and a woman. I think they're married and they started having some issues, so it's all about their marriage. It's all about this bar that he owns, the Half Moon, and how he's kind of struggling, how she struggled with infertility and how that affected their marriage. And it's just one of those very calm books, but it's also some real life shit happening in it, and it was very, very easy to listen to. My library loan ended before I could finish it, so eventually I'll pick it back up. Now for July, I have to be the bearer of bad news for you and me. I only finished one book last month. I did have a vlog on it, The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I gave it like 3.5 stars. This is a story about Kit. She is like an at-home health agent. She cares for patients at their house and she usually lives with them. And she gets called to live in this house on a cliff. She is going to be in charge of caring for Lenora, and Lenora just happens to be a woman who's very notorious in this town. When Lenora was young, I think what was it, back in the 1920s? This is set in the 80s, by the way, like in Kit's present timeline. Back in the 20s, Lenora's family gets massacred and everyone blames Lenora for it, but they couldn't ever prove it. And she never talked after that night because of strokes or whatever, something happened to her. And so the whole town has this stigma against her and this house. They have this chant that they sing, and Kit has definitely heard it because she grew up in this town and she's kind of scared of Lenora and of this house and of this whole situation, but she ends up working there because she's desperate. We find out very early on that Kit has some sort of drama, that she got in trouble at her last job, like so much in trouble that she almost got fired. We don't know what it is. We do find out eventually. And so there's mysteries left and right. There's Lenora's mystery, this family murder, who actually did it? Did Lenora do it? We have the mystery of Kit, what's happening with her job, why is she in trouble? So it is pretty intriguing right away. And then Lenora starts writing on a typewriter and starts telling her story to Kit. And so this is truly a mystery. We're finding out tiny little clues and trying to drag them together. I realize that I like thrillers more than mysteries because, first of all, something I see a lot in mysteries and something that was really frustrating in here is that the main character is accusing literally everyone of this murder, and not just sort of thinking in a paranoid fashion that, oh, maybe this person did it. No, she steps in with her whole heart, like, you did this. And she doesn't even keep it to herself. She's like, I know you did this. And it's like, bitch, no, you don't know anything. And then when they clear their names, she's instantly wholeheartedly like, oh wait, you did this. It's something I'm really, really frustrated by. Red herrings in general are really frustrating. The end of this book, though, made up for everything. I thought it was really fast paced. There was a lot of action, lots of twists and turns. One of them I saw coming because I flipped to the last page of this book to get a page count, and there was something on there that I couldn't unsee, and I sort of had tracked that while I was reading it, and I kind of knew what was gonna happen. But something pretty unusual happened, and at one point there was a red herring that I was like, oh my god, is this actually it? It wasn't it. It wasn't it. Riley Sager, I had to trust him in the plot twists. I really do. So yeah, I had a frustrating time reading most of this, but my intrigue was pretty high and the ending definitely made up for it in my opinion. In that vlog where I read that, I also DNFed Sister Maiden Monster. I think I read like 44% of this. I don't know why I remember that number. This is a sort of, it's not post-apocalyptic. I think maybe it goes into that later, but it's like apocalyptic. I can't say that word. I believe the story is about 3 women, and so it's very much like 3 short stories, or at least one novella. Like I wasn't even finished with the first girl's story, almost halfway through the book. In that first story that I was reading, we really find out what happened. It was a virus, and it started turning people into something else in various different ways. But you get sick, and then you have different effects. And our first girl, her effect was that she had a hankering for human brains. That's the part I was really looking forward to. You learn more about her sexuality, and she was engaged, so you find out more about like her relationship with her fiance. The thing I really didn't like about it was that it mentioned coronavirus like 50 times, and it was a little more medically driven than I would like. I don't mind things happening from a virus. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know the ins and outs of the DNA. I want weird shit to happen and I don't want an explanation. And that is definitely a personal preference. So it's definitely a possibility that if you don't mind that, you could enjoy this book. But I do also think that some of the transitions were weird. Like some things took a long time to explain and to go on, and then there would be a jump and she's like, suddenly I have teeth on my tongue. Like, bitch, when did that happen? Why didn't you explain more of that? I don't understand how this is written, and maybe if I read the whole thing, I would understand a little bit more, but I just wasn't vibing with the writing. I don't know, I guess it's just not my type of apocalyptic story. As for books that I started Anon Pls, and I technically DNF'd this, but I don't have it on the DNF section because I really think this is gonna be great. It's giving so much The Devil Wears Prada, and I love that movie. It's just that this is a stressful situation. So this is a main character who's working for a stylist in New York City, and the stylist is just an abusive employer, and I can just I can see and feel how stressful this book is gonna be, and I can't handle it right now. So it's on hold. I don't want this hardworking main character to just be shat on by her employer for the 70% of the book. I can't deal with that right now. It's just so mean. And I feel like I'm also gonna really like it though, because there is a lot of talk about fashion, and I just love that in books. Also from the library, I started listening to Scary Stories for Young Foxes, and I liked it so much when I tried the first chapter of it. I'm not including all of those books that I read the first chapter of, by the way. But I probably listened to 3 of the short stories in here. These are short horror stories for children, which sounds so cool. And I gotta be honest, these are kind of scary. They're scary because they're real. So this is a group of young foxes, and they start listening to scary stories from this old fox that is in their neighborhood. And the first story is these kids who have this beloved teacher, and the teacher gets rabies and starts eating them all. It was truly terrifying, and they don't all survive. So it's very scary in that real world, especially real animal world. Animals die, they get hunted. Natural selection, man, it's a tough cookie to take. It's a tough pill. I don't think any cookie's tough to take. I'll take them all. It's crazy that this is for children, because it is a little frightening in a very this is the real world, people are dying. They actually die. Sometimes I forget that. I would have kept listening to the audiobook except for the narrator. You could hear him swallowing and making that noise with his mouth, and I cannot handle that. I'm sorry. You could hear him breathing too in between, gasping for breath, and I don't know, I want those cut when I listen to an audiobook. So I am very excited to finish this physically. I started the Rachel incident, and this was one of the cases where I liked the audiobook so much that I had to buy the book, because there are things I want to underline, there are things I want to remember. I laughed quite a few times while listening to this. I don't know how far I got, maybe 50 pages into it, but this is a story about a woman. I think there are 2 timelines here as well, and she's talking to us about her time being a young person, mostly new adult age, 18, 19. I think this takes place in Ireland. It's all about her finding her best friend. I think we learn more about his sexuality as the book goes on, and it's really their friendship, which is just, I love reading about friendship. But also, I think as the book goes on, it goes into this relationship she had with one of her professors. The first chapter of the book, she's in present timeline, she's pregnant, and she sees some guy in the bus, and he's like, oh, did you hear about Dr. So-and-so? And she's like, why would I hear about him? And she's obviously being defensive, and he's like, oh, you guys are really close, wink, wink. But apparently he had a stroke, or he's very sick and almost dying, and she kind of freezes up, and that's the introduction to the book. So we know something happened with this professor. Mostly though, I'm interested in this friendship between, what's their names? James and our main character, Rachel, obviously. And I just think it's gonna be one of those books that is a good friendship book. I also started Binding 13. I got 17% into it, and I had to put it down because, my God, things take so long to happen in this book. There's a lot of dialogue that doesn't really go very far. The plot moves glacially, but I am interested in finishing it. I don't know if maybe I need to buy the physical copy so that I can physically see how far I'm getting into the book. I don't know, sometimes that helps me when I'm feeling stagnant. The funny thing is, I got this because I've heard so many mixed opinions on this book, and I've seen a couple of reviews where people are like, this is the worst book ever. But I thought for some reason it was in the way of this is highly controversial, which always makes me more interested in a book. But there was nothing really controversial in it up to the point I read, except maybe a couple of cringy, ignorant high school things that someone said, but they were really brief, and I don't know, I guess I was expecting to be oh my God, these people are vile. And they're just kind of idiot high school kids so far. But I know that there is a community within this community who are so diehard for this series, and I feel like I have to at least read this first one. So eventually I'll be finishing Binding 13. And then, of course, I read the first chapter of Divine Rivals. I was supposed to read this and 2 other books that were given in my July TBR. I read 1 chapter of this. I don't know what possessed me after I started reading this, that I was like, no reading for the rest of the month. And it wasn't even that late into the month. It was the second week of July. I said no more reading. Honestly, what is my brain doing to me right now? I don't know, but I'm going to beat it into submission. That sounded not good or healthy, but whatever. And it sucks because I did enjoy this first chapter of this book. This is a historical fantasy fantasy romance. She is freshly 18, our main character Iris, and she starts working for a newspaper. She's a journalist, and she has a sort of workplace rival. And I love a rival in the workplace and or in an academic setting because you know they're gonna fall in love, and so there's just this tension, and I love it. And if they're truly rivals, I love the moment when they turn from rivals to something else. Like, I want to see what happens and what makes them make that change. Obviously, I didn't get that in the first chapter, but there's a lot going on with Iris. Her brother has gone off to war and has sort of disappeared. She hasn't really heard from him. Her mother is struggling really bad with, I guess, the news of her brother, maybe some other stuff that we don't know yet, and she's drinking heavily, and Iris is sort of forced to take care of her. It seems like a really sticky situation, and she is competing with this guy. What's his name? His name's Roman. And the first chapter, I don't know if it goes back and forth in point of views, but this one was from her point of view, and he actually does seem like a true rival. Like, they seem competitive, but they also seem kind of nasty toward each other, which is nice. Fictionally, it's nice because I don't like it when a book is sold as enemies to lovers and they aren't truly enemies. Like, right now they seem kind of enemy-like. There's obviously potential for them to get closer to each other, but even she was like, hey, we're the only ones left here. Do you want to go get some coffee? And he straight up says, no, I can't. I guess it's not that mean of him, but she clearly was making an effort to be more friendly, and he was just shut her down immediately. It was really giving me vibes of The Hating Game, but if Hermione and Malfoy were the main characters of that book, which I don't hate. So I will definitely be reading this in August. My brain is not allowed to tell me not to read this month. Like, that's not an option. So this will be read hopefully within the next couple days for me. So make sure to subscribe if you're not already to hear my thoughts on this. All right, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books, especially the ones that I have started and haven't finished. Hype me up or tell me your controversial opinions, because again, sometimes that makes me want to read a book even more. Let me know what you read this month or this summer, and if you read Fourth Wing, which again, like I said, that's the book club book for everyone in the bookish world. Let me know what you thought. Did you hate it? Did you love it? Let's discuss below. I'll see you guys later.